Hi, I'm Patrick Markfort from Articulate Nerd.
And I'm Dave Ferraro from Comics and More. And this week we are going to be talking about Craig Thompson's Habibi, which people have been waiting for 7 or 8 years since Blankets came out. So it'll be a little different than the DC comic stuff that we've been doing the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So I was a big fan of Craig Thompson's Blankets. I think it was a really great young adult graphic novel. It has some similarities, but this is very different. It's much more epic of a story. But he does have, obviously, the religious themes throughout this book, like he did in Blankets too.
Right.
So Habibi follows two child slaves, Dodola and Zam, as they kind of grow up with each other. They escape to live in this abandoned ship in the middle of the desert. And they kind of grow up with each other. Zam has to go out and get the water for them. Dodola goes out and she actually sells her body in exchange for food for them. And meanwhile, they kind of grow and have an affection toward each other. Dodola tells stories to Zam to help him kind of calm down and sleep and stuff. And they kind of that's kind of what helps them bond a lot is the stories that they tell. And a lot of the stories are from the Quran, but there's also a lot of comparing the Quran to the Bible in this as well. And a lot of the times I feel like these stories kind of parallel what's happening in their lives at the moment. But after a while, some chaotic things happen in their lives where Dodola is actually kidnapped. She was kind of almost a mythical figure in the desert as this woman who can give pleasure to men, just kind of appearing like a mirage, kind of. So the Sultan kidnaps her for his harem, and she's in a harem for a while. She gets pregnant and loses the child after a while. Zam, meanwhile, has felt guilty over his sexual interest in Dodola, and he eventually goes into the city and becomes a eunuch. But he also ends up in the palace eventually as well, when he's kidnapped to pretty much be a servant as a eunuch in the palace. But yeah, a lot of stuff happens to them, obviously, throughout this book. I know some of the criticisms of it are the ambiguous place and time of the book. I know a lot of people have a problem with that. I didn't really have much a problem with that myself. You kind of know it's this Middle Eastern type of place. You don't really get a very good sense of time, especially as some of the more industrial stuff comes in at the end. But it wasn't very distracting to me, I guess. I kind of knew it going in just because I'd read a few reviews.
So people have been criticizing that?
Yeah, people have been, they couldn't fully immerse themselves in it because they were distracted by, what and when this was taking place and where exactly. I'm not a huge... I don't have to know absolutely every detail of something when I'm reading it. I can just enjoy the characters, I feel like, with this. But I do have to say that I really did enjoy this book overall. I think Craig Thompson is a great storyteller, and I love the religious stories that he told throughout this. I love the comparisons. What did you think about it?
I really enjoyed it, too.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot more than I thought I would.
Mm-hmm.
I liked Blankets a lot.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was not the be-all, end-all of graphic literature, which I felt a lot of people kind of treated it as when it was first published way back in 2003,
Well,
whatever.
it was one of those first big ones that you saw at bookstores, you know what I mean? There was Jimmy Corgan and stuff before that, but
no doubt,
yeah.
Blankets was a great book. I really enjoyed Blankets.
I feel like it was an important book too for bookstores.
Yeah,
so.
It definitely was a signature book of the first decade of the 21st century, for sure. It was. I like Blankets a lot, but I wasn't. I was looking forward to reading Habibi, but I didn't think I would like it as much as I did.
Okay.
But it is such a great story.
It is.
It is a true epic. It's a very ambitious book. And a lot happens, as you said. You summarized a lot of the plot, but there's a lot more to it than that. It's a very intricately constructed book. So not only is the plot very involved and packed with a lot of events, I feel like there's a lot thematically kind of folded into the narrative. It's very kind of deliberately constructed. It examines a lot of big themes, sexuality, gender, religion, the encroachment of the modern world. I mean, we could probably do 4 shows on different aspects of things that are touched on in Habibi, but at its heart, it is a love story. And the love and devotion that these 2 characters have for each other is the constant. And even though the nature of that love changes throughout the course of the book in some pretty interesting ways, the intensity of the love and the devotion between the 2 characters never wavers. And when they're separated, they're always committed to finding a way to come back together. So it's just a great story. It was a real page turner. I mean, it's over like 600 pages, but it's never boring. It's just a lot of fun to read. It's beautifully drawn. Craig Thompson has a very lush, fluid, black and white art style, which we saw in Blankets. I think he's a better artist here, and he's also doing more detailed, intricate, detail-oriented artwork. So it's a very rich-looking book that has really absorbed a lot of the look of the culture and the aesthetics of the art and the architecture of the Middle East, which I get the impression that Thompson is just enamored with, or at least fascinated by, and that really comes true in this lovingly drawn book. So I really liked it. I'm kind of surprised to hear that people criticize it because of the ambiguity in regards to the time and place.
Yeah, there was a I forget which paper it was, but there was a paper that kind of gave it a muddling review just because of that.
Because
too.
of that?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that definitely speaks to people's expectations for the book.
Yeah.
As I remember it, Craig Thompson first mentioned Habibi not too long after Blankets came out. So it's been a long wait for this book. And at that time, to announce that your next book was going to be something set vaguely in the Middle East and dealing with that culture and the Quran, it was a lot closer to 9/11 then. So I think the expectations were probably that it would engage with the current political landscape a little bit more. I kind of assume that. I think a lot of people probably assume that. So maybe, that criticism is disappointment based on those own people's expectations. But I don't really think that is a valid criticism of Habibi, because it's not that Craig Thompson, forgot to tell us exactly where and when this is taking place. It's very deliberately just kind of one half step removed from our contemporary reality. Right? So we're talking about the actual Quran, we're talking about actual Islam, but it's purposefully ambiguous. It's kind of a timeless story. It vaguely takes place in the present day, but it also seems like it could take place a long time ago. Or, like I said, in a slightly removed kind of reality similar to our own, but maybe not quite the world we know. I think it has a deliberately kind of timeless quality, which I enjoyed about it. I would compare it to writers like Salman Rushdie or Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who do kind of magical realism. Which often is set in kind of based on a particular place and culture, but kind of exists in their own little worlds. And that's how I think of Habibi. I feel like that's a really deliberate choice that Craig Thompson made. So I don't really think that is a valid criticism of it.